Hi, I'm Calliope. My sister once stood. But that wasn't the worst of it. They left me out of photos, out of toasts, out of every version of the family story that mattered. And when I finally stopped paying, they didn't ask why. They just called me cruel. Then my sister made a GoFundMe and said I abandoned her. But what do you do when silence isn't respected, when your support gets erased, and your name only matters when it's paying for someone else's life? What happens when the one holding it all together finally walks away? I had stayed silent for years, but that night, my silence started to expire. The room was already full when I arrived, though no one seemed to notice. It was Tamsin's night, after all. My sister. The golden one, as Grandma used to say, though never directly to me. I slipped through the side door of the private room at the restaurant and stood for a second, just long enough to let my eyes adjust and scan the space. Round tables filled with cousins, old neighbors, co-workers I didn't recognize. Tamsin was at the center of it all, of course, surrounded, lit up, adored. Verena, our mother, hovered nearby, laughing just a beat too loud at something someone said. I exhaled through my nose, quietly, and made my way to the only empty seat I could find. Back row, near the service entrance, sandwiched between a ficus plant and the swinging kitchen door. Not ideal, but not unexpected. "She's here," someone muttered. I caught the words but didn't look up. It didn't matter who said it. None of them stood to greet me. No one pulled out a chair. The celebration didn't pause. Instead, I heard the clink of a fork against a glass. Tamsin's boyfriend, Owen, tapping to get everyone's attention. "Before dessert," he beamed, "we've got a little tribute. Tamsin's journey. What a ride it's been." The projector flickered on behind him. Photos appeared. Childhood snapshots, graduation caps, summer internships. One caught my attention. Our family vacation to Colorado. There we all were on the screen, smiling in front of a mountain cabin. Except, I wasn't. Tamsin, Verena, Dad. Even Owen, who didn't join us until a year later, was photoshopped in. But not me. "Where was I?" I asked, barely a whisper. Verena leaned over just enough to hear me. "You blinked. The original wasn't great. This one just looked better." She said it like she was choosing a salad dressing. I didn't respond. I didn't move. The room burst into applause as the slideshow ended. Owen held up a glass. "To Tamsin, the smartest, kindest, most hardworking person I know. She did it all on her own, with nothing but grit and grace." He turned to her, "And maybe a little help from Mom and Dad." I blinked once, twice, not a single mention, not one acknowledgement. And I had paid for this dinner. For the last 2 years, I'd been covering Tamsin's tuition. Quietly, automatically. No one asked me to, they just assumed. Verena had mentioned financial gaps and bad timing, and I offered to help. No ceremony, no contracts, just monthly wire transfers, textbook reimbursements, and rent split quietly between 2 accounts. I skipped vacations. I skipped new tires. I skipped Christmas. But it didn't matter. Not when she stood there in her designer dress, her voice dripping with polished charm. "I wouldn't be here without the incredible support system around me," she said into the mic. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Owen. And thank you to my professors, my mentors, and my incredible resilience." The room roared. I clapped once, twice, then stopped. Dinner rolled out. Dry chicken, 2 sweet wine, polite conversations about future plans. I stayed quiet. No one missed my voice. They were too busy asking Owen when the engagement was happening. At some point, someone passed out little framed prints of the family photo as keepsakes. I didn't take one. By the time dessert came, a ridiculous tower of macarons that no one touched, I had already made up my mind. I pulled my phone from my bag under the table, tapped into my banking app, pulled up the last transaction labeled Tamsin Housing Fund. The confirmation blinked at me in blue. I bookmarked it, then closed the app. No drama, no announcements. My eyes drifted upward just in time to catch another photo being taken. Tamsin holding a champagne flute high, Verena on one side, Owen on the other. The photographer gestured to the crowd, asking for someone to squeeze in. Someone pointed to a cousin instead of me. Of course they did. I adjusted my seat just slightly, so the plant hid me completely. I didn't say a word when I walked back in. The air inside the restaurant had shifted slightly, louder, looser. More wine had been poured. People were standing now, moving from table to table, grabbing photos, exchanging hugs. I slid back into my chair, unnoticed. The cushion hadn't even cooled. It was as if I'd never left. From across the room, I could hear someone saying, "She's got it made, that one. No loans, no stress. Tamsin's living right." A laugh followed, then a follow-up from another voice, one I didn't recognize. "Doesn't her sister cover everything?" Owen, standing nearby, raised his glass and chimed in with mock pride. "Hey, don't out our secret. Tamsin's got a sponsor. Just kidding, sort of." Then came the line that cut cleaner than any insult ever had. Tamsin turned, glass in hand, a slight sway in her step and a too bright smile. "Oh, please," she said, waving vaguely in my direction. "She acts like she's some kind of savior. But let's be real, we've carried her for years. She's just a leech." The music didn't stop, but it should have. There was no dramatic gasp, no shocked silence, just a ripple of awkward glances, a few fake chuckles, and then the party tried to continue itself, like a wheel that stumbled but kept rolling. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. I just looked at her. She didn't look back. I felt my mother's hand brush my shoulder, light as dust. "She didn't mean it, sweetie," she whispered, her voice laced with practiced nonchalance. "You know how she gets when she's had a drink." Owen laughed and clapped a hand on someone's back. "It's okay. Family's allowed to vent, right?" I stood up slowly, steady, without a sound. No one stopped me. I walked past 3 half-empty wine bottles, a centerpiece of wilting hydrangeas, and a waiter carrying a tray of untouched tiramisu. I pushed through the glass door to the patio, where the noise faded into a dull hum behind me. The air outside was cool for once, carrying that dry desert chill that only shows up after the sun has finally given up. I wrapped my arms around myself, not from the cold. Out there, under a strand of twinkle lights someone had bothered to hang for ambiance, I let myself breathe. That word, leech, rattled around in my head like a loose marble in an empty jar. Not because it surprised me, because it didn't. It had been years since Tamsin last saw me as someone she needed, let alone respected. There was a time once when she defended me, 5th grade, on the bus. A boy had pulled my ponytail and called me dumb. She'd yanked his backpack and told him, "That girl is my sister. You don't get to talk to her like that." I used to remember that moment with warmth, but now it felt like something I'd made up, or something she'd said for show. I was her shield back then, I muttered to myself. Now I'm her shadow. Inside, someone popped another cork. I pulled out my phone again, opening the email confirmation for the last tuition payment. The subject line, "Wire transfer successful, dated 2 days ago. Amount, more than my monthly rent." My thumb hovered over the cancel auto-renew option. I didn't press it, not yet. Instead, I closed the email, locked my phone, and looked up at the stars. They were faint, blurred by city lights and noise, but still there, still steady. I stood outside for a while longer, until the music shifted to something slower, until the laughter softened into low murmurs. Then, just as quietly as I had left, I returned to the room. My chair waited for me like a ghost no one had noticed missing. I sat down, pulled the chair in, smiled, reached into my bag and typed a short message to my financial manager. "Pause all tuition-related payments. I'll follow up." Then I set my phone face down, folded my napkin across my lap, and looked ahead at nothing in particular. Some things break loudly, others just stop. The morning after the dinner, I was at Verena's house, still running on polite autopilot. She called earlier to ask if I could help clean out the garage. Just a few boxes, she'd said, like she didn't remember I had barely slept, like she forgot last night even happened or wanted me to. I pulled into the driveway around 10. The sun was already starting its climb over the Tucson rooftops, but the garage was shaded and cool. Verena handed me a box marked Tamsin School and waved toward the pile. Sort what you want, toss what you don't. I'll be in the kitchen if you need tea. I didn't need tea. I needed honesty. But that wasn't on the menu here. The box was dusty but not sealed. Inside were binders, glittery notebooks, worn-out folders. A few childhood drawings, unicorns, volcanoes, a family portrait with 4 figures. I wasn't one of them. I kept going, paper by paper, until something folded and yellowed caught my attention. I thought it might be a class letter or a school permission slip, but as I unfolded it, I recognized the handwriting instantly. Tamsin. Her name signed at the bottom in big loops. It wasn't addressed to anyone. It was just written. Like a journal entry she never meant anyone to find, or maybe she hoped someone would. I hate when Calliope follows me around. She's so clingy, always asking questions. I wish she'd just disappear sometimes. It'd be quieter. I stared at it for longer than I probably should have. I wasn't 10 anymore, but something about reading those words as an adult made them sharper, not duller. There were no exclamation points, no spelling errors. She had written it with intent. That feeling of being excess, of being tolerated but not wanted, it had a paper trail. I folded the note back, slower this time, and set it aside. I wasn't sure why I kept it. Maybe as proof I hadn't imagined it all. Verena appeared in the doorway with a mug in hand. Find anything good? I held up the letter without speaking. She took one glance and shrugged. You girls wrote all sorts of things. Kids can be dramatic. I waited. No apology came. Besides, she added, sipping her tea, you've always been more sensitive. You take things too personally. I take things personally? I asked, my voice calm, but not soft. You know what I mean, she said, with that slight tilt of her head she used when trying to look reasonable. You're the younger one. You always had more space, more leniency. Tamsin had more pressure. You had more freedom. It makes sense you'd be a little more emotional. She didn't say spoiled, but it hung in the air like it was waiting to be spoken. I looked back at the note in my hand. You always made me feel like I had to apologize just for being here, I said, not to accuse her, but because it was simply true. Verena sighed. Not with guilt, more like inconvenience. Calliope, you're a grown woman. Don't dig up the past just to feel wronged. I almost laughed. I didn't dig it up. It was right there, labeled and boxed. She turned back toward the kitchen. Let it go. You've got your job, your place, your life. You should be grateful. There it was. That word. Grateful. As if I hadn't been. As if the very act of standing here without asking for anything wasn't gratitude enough. She disappeared into the house again, and I stayed in the garage, the note still in my fingers. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. But something inside me moved, like a hinge rusted too long finally shifted. By late afternoon, the sun was harsh, and the work was done. I took the note, folded it into a small envelope I pulled from my bag, and wrote on it in capital letters. Proof, for me. I slipped it into my laptop case, next to some legal papers I'd been meaning to file. Then I walked back inside and stood for a moment in the living room, staring at the family photo on the mantel. A polished silver frame, a perfect smile, Tamsin in her cap and gown, Owen beside her, Verena just behind, proud and beaming. I wasn't in the picture. I hadn't been invited for that photo either. It wasn't even noon when I hit the 10 freeway heading west. Verena had sent a text that morning, asking if I could drop off some paperwork at Fullerton State, something Tamsin needed for a scholarship panel. I wasn't in the mood for errands, but I wasn't in the mood for another phone call from her either. So I packed my laptop, printed the file, and drove the 5 hours in silence, stopping once for gas and a bitter coffee. By the time I parked near the student center, The sun was high, and the campus buzzed with students darting between buildings. I had called Tamsin before I left a voicemail. No response. Typical. I didn't see her when I walked inside the lobby. No wave from a bench. No quick, "be right there" text. So I asked the receptionist if she could pass the folder along and stepped aside. That's when I heard it. Familiar, but too out of place to ignore. Calliope? I turned. Ms. Redley, our high school counselor. Now slightly thinner, with streaks of white in her hair and reading glasses pushed halfway down her nose. "Wow," she said. "Didn't expect to run into you here." She looked at the folder in my hand. "Helping Tamsin?" I nodded. She tilted her head, searching my face for something. "Still figuring things out, huh? It's okay. Not everyone finds their path early." I didn't say a word. Just smiled. A tight, practiced smile. The kind you use when someone steps on your foot and apologizes like it was your fault. She gave my arm a light squeeze before walking off, like I was still 17, fragile, adrift. Outside, I found a shaded bench near the campus coffee kiosk. I pulled out my laptop, connected to my hotspot, and joined a Project Sync call. On my screen were two dashboards, one for a US contract, another for a rollout we just launched in Canada. My team pinged updates, I gave notes, adjusted milestones. I could have done it from home, but there was something satisfying about doing it right here, surrounded by strangers who thought I was irrelevant. The call ended just as two girls walked past. Their conversation was loud enough to hear. "That's her, right?" one whispered. "Tamsin's sister?" The other rolled her eyes. "Yeah, she's like their IT mascot. I think she's always fixing Wi-Fi or something." Both laughed. I didn't move. They didn't know I heard, or they didn't care. I closed my laptop slowly and looked around. Banners flapped above the walkway. "Celebrate first-gen college students!" A few students posed beneath them, holding signs and smiling wide. I muttered under my breath, "Some of us just skipped the debt." My phone buzzed. "Verena, thanks for dropping it off." Tamsin was busy with a panel. Another text followed seconds later. "Just don't linger too long. You're not faculty. Try not to embarrass her." I stared at the messages. No thank you. No question about the drive. Just stay invisible. I opened my email, attached a proposal draft to our internal server, and clicked send without adding my name to the doc. I'd long stopped signing things that didn't need it. Let the credit float. Across the quad, a student with a camera filmed a classmate for some kind of campus feature. I watched them set up the shot, adjust the angles, make everything seem more polished than it really was. I knew that trick. Back at the car, I passed a glass window and caught my reflection. No makeup, hair in a knot, backpack slung over one shoulder. I didn't look like a dropout. I didn't look like a backup plan. I looked like a woman who had given more than anyone noticed and was done explaining it. I drove back to Tucson late that evening. The traffic had thinned after the rush, and the desert sky dimmed into a dark copper haze. I kept the radio low, not listening, just needing the sound of something other than my own thoughts bouncing off the windshield. Back in my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and powered up my laptop, intending to check a few project dashboards. Something simple, something that wouldn't bleed. Instead, I opened Instagram. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for a distraction. Maybe I needed a reason. There it was, Tamsin's latest post. A beach photo. Her holding a cocktail in one hand, a sun hat in the other. Palm trees behind her, water too blue to be anywhere near Arizona. Captioned, "Work hard, rest harder." Self-funded queen. Self-funded. She was wearing the swimsuit I bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. I remembered because it was too expensive, but she said she needed it for a school trip. I told her, "Pick one," and she picked the most ridiculous thing on the rack. My finger hovered over the screen, then dropped to open my banking app instead. The last transfer labeled Spring Tuition Support, TB, had gone out 6 days ago. A separate charge on my credit card, same day, showed an airline booking. She hadn't just taken a trip. She'd used the money I sent for her tuition to vacation in Cancun. And then she posted about it. Bragged about it. Publicly. As if I were the fool for ever thinking that generosity deserved discretion. My phone buzzed. It was my father, Javier. His name flashing across the screen felt like a trigger all its own. I picked up. "Calliope," he said without a greeting, his tone clipped. "I just talked to your mother. Why are you cutting Tamsin off now?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to see how far he'd go. "She needs consistency, not drama," he continued. "It's her last semester. You pull funding now, she could lose housing. She's already under pressure. This is not the time for pride." I kept my voice steady. "Did she tell you where she is right now?" There was a pause. "Isn't she on campus?" "No," I said, calm but sharp. "She's in Cancun, on my money." Silence. Then a sigh. "I'm sure there's an explanation." "There is," I cut in. "She lied. That's the explanation." I didn't wait for a defense. I just hung up. There are moments when anger burns, and there are moments when it calcifies, turns into something harder, colder. That was one of those. I opened my laptop again, this time with purpose. New document. Subject: Financial suspension of support. Effective immediately, I kept it short. Clean. No emotion, no threats. Just facts. I copied Verena, Tamsin, and Javier. 3 sentences. 1 attached PDF. Then I logged into the housing portal I'd used to set up her lease last year. The account was under my name. So were the utilities. I flagged everything as hold status and removed her from authorized access. No messages, no heads up. I wasn't being cruel. I was being finished. Next, I went into my shared Google Drive folders and moved every tuition-related document to a private, locked archive. Then I changed the passwords. All of them. The relief didn't hit like a wave. It arrived like a door clicking shut. My phone chimed again. This time, it was from work. My assistant, Renee, asking if I wanted to allocate remaining quarter-end funds into the new internship program. I typed back, "Yes, reallocate everything. Remove all family disbursements." After I hit send, I sat back and looked at the city lights through my window. It was quiet. Just the hum of the fridge, the dull thump of neighbors' music next door. I whispered out loud, not to anyone in particular. If they wanted a sponsor, they should have respected the terms. By the time the sun crept up again, Tucson was already dry and humming. I was sitting at my dining table, laptop open, trying to finish a project timeline while sipping bitter coffee from a chipped mug that said, "I owe me." The city moved outside my window, but inside, everything was quiet. Too quiet, like the kind of quiet that holds its breath before a storm. That's when Verena's text came in. "Tamsin's graduation is coming up. She's always dreamed of having that Louis Vuitton monogram Alma. You know the one. Maybe it could be your gift to her?" A second message followed almost instantly. "She won't say it out loud, but she's been through a lot. A little celebration would really help smooth things over. You know how she is." I didn't answer. I didn't even blink, just stared at the screen. The bag was over $2,400. I looked it up. I wasn't surprised. What surprised me was the wording, "smooth things over," as if betrayal was a smudge on the family dinner table, and money was Windex. A week ago, Tamsin had called me a leech. A month ago, just an IT girl. And now, Verena wanted me to drop a couple grand so Tamsin could play independent woman in front of her friends with a designer bag she didn't earn. I set the phone down and walked to the sink, rinsed my mug. The air inside the apartment had shifted. Not warmer, not colder. Just different. Like a wire had finally snapped quietly inside my chest. Not 30 minutes later, I got a DM from Owen. "She told me you pulled the plug on her tuition." "That's brutal, Cal. Hope you're proud of destroying someone's future. All over your ego?" I didn't respond. I didn't even finish reading the message twice. Instead, I opened our shared drive folder, the one labeled T-Support, Tuition and Housing. I changed its name to Revoked. Then I removed every shared permission. I archived the message from Owen and screenshotted it just for good measure. Not out of fear, out of habit. Documentation was how I stayed sane in chaos. After that, I opened my journal and wrote only one line. They thought the warning was for show. But systems don't warn, they execute. It was almost noon when I logged into the housing platform. Tamsin's lease was technically mine, signed under my name, on my credit, tied to my insurance. She was a subtenant in theory only. I clicked into the account and flagged it for ownership verification. Within the hour, an email pinged back. Ownership confirmed. You may request a lock change or proceed with formal lease termination. Please confirm action. I didn't click anything, not yet. People think retaliation always comes with noise, doors slamming, voices raised, but the most permanent things in life don't scream. They whisper. That night, as I was closing my laptop, Verina's number popped up. A voicemail, not a call. Of course, I let it go to message, then hit play. We raised you better than this. I don't know what's gotten into you, but I know this isn't who you are. Maybe you've made some money, maybe you think you're too good for us now. But this attitude, this cruelty, it's not how we raised you. I hope you can look at yourself in the mirror and still be proud. There was a long pause at the end, like she wanted to say more, but ran out of the kind of words that fit her version of reality. I sat in the dark, the soft hum of the fridge filling the silence. I didn't play it back. I didn't save it. I deleted it and whispered into the empty air. This is where I came from, but not where I'll end. 2.5 days passed without a single word. Not from Verina. Not from Tamsin. Not from anyone in that carefully curated circle they called family. Then, just past noon on Wednesday, as I sat in a quiet corner of my co-working space, glass walls, steel furniture, filtered water on tap, my screen pinged. Renee had just finished her budget review and stepped out to take a call. I figured the message was from a client. It wasn't. Isn't this your sister? The message read. There was a link. I clicked. It was a GoFundMe page, created under a name I didn't recognize at first glance. Hope herself. But the profile photo removed all doubt. Tamsin, sitting on the campus steps, hoodie pulled tight, looking upward like she was praying for a miracle. The lighting was intentional, backlit, soft, emotional. The description hit harder than the image. I've come so far. But without help, I might not graduate. After losing financial support from my only sibling, due to her unpredictable behavior, I'm facing eviction and being forced out of school. Please, anything helps. This isn't just tuition, it's a lifeline. Unpredictable behavior? There were photos embedded. Her crying outside the student center. A screenshot of an overdue notice, one she must have made herself. It wasn't real. I knew because I never let payments lapse. Not once. She painted me as unstable, as cold, as cruel. My hand didn't shake, not even a twitch. Instead, I pulled up my email, searched for every document I'd ever stored regarding Tamsin's education. Tuition invoices, Venmo transfers, emails with the housing manager. I opened a blank folder and began dropping files inside one by one. I didn't know how I was going to use them yet, but I was done playing defense. Around 5 p.m., I got the second hit. This time it was Facebook. Tamsin had posted a status, public. The kind of thing people write when they want to look brave while dragging someone. You think you know someone, especially when it's your own blood. But money changes people. Sometimes they stop seeing you as family and start treating you like a project. I never asked to be saved. I just wanted support. Now I'm alone, facing eviction, while she gets applause. There were likes, hundreds, comments too. You're better off without her? Some people just use money to punish. She sounds toxic. Cut her off before she cuts deeper. Verina liked it. Owen commented, couldn't have said it better. I didn't cry. I didn't scroll. I didn't even log out. I just opened a new browser tab and pulled up Imgur, created a private album. I uploaded a PDF of every tuition payment from the past 3 years, copies of the housing lease, signed and dated screenshots of every monthly rent and utilities payment, the full health insurance registration document she'd begged me to file just once. I titled the album Fallacy. Then I returned to the GoFundMe page, copied the link, and posted one anonymous comment. Before you donate, maybe ask where the other $92,000 went. That was it. I didn't attach files. I didn't write a backstory. Just the one sentence. By morning, the campaign was gone. Suspended by the platform. No warning, no explanation. Someone must have flagged it, or several people did. I never followed up to check. On Facebook, the tide turned. Quiet at first, then louder. Wait, didn't her sister pay for her whole undergrad? This doesn't add up. I donated. I want a refund. Farina's comment disappeared. Owen's too. I didn't respond to any of it. I just watched it like you'd watch a fire finally burn itself out. That night, a message came in. Tamsin. That was low. You ruined me. I read it once. No reply. No reaction. Just opened the firewall log and revoked the last device still logged into my shared folder. She wouldn't be able to access any files from now on, not even accidentally. I didn't ruin her. I just stopped letting her use my name to build her fiction. The next morning, I pulled into the lot in front of Daniel's building with 10 minutes to spare. The sun was just starting to beat down on the glass panels of the structure, warming the dashboard of my car while the AC hummed low. I didn't bother checking my phone. I wasn't expecting anyone to text. The people who might have cared about what I was about to do had already made it clear where their loyalties stood. Inside the lobby, the air was cool and sterile. Polished tile floors clicked under the heels of passing employees, and the gentle whir of the espresso machine behind the reception desk gave the space a false sense of comfort. I sat in one of the waiting chairs near the window, phone in my lap, screen dark, watching the time inch forward. No nervous tapping, no second guessing. This was just another step. A legal formality, nothing more. At exactly 9, Daniel's assistant opened the frosted glass door and called me in. His office was as precise and impersonal as I remembered. Clean cedar scent undercut by printer ink and air conditioning. The desk was clear, save for the slim manila folder waiting in the center. Daniel didn't waste time. He slid the folder toward me and opened it to the top page. Leaseholder, Calliope Menendez, he said, tapping the highlighted line with the tip of his pen. Utilities have been transferred to your name. Insurance policy, too, under the LLC. He paused, looking up at me, expression unreadable, but not cold. Professional, detached. You don't have to explain anything, he said quietly. You just need to sign. I nodded. My hand didn't shake. I picked up the pen and signed my name cleanly across each line where a signature was required. I didn't flinch. This wasn't an impulsive act. It was the culmination of months of silence, gaslighting, passive aggression, and finally, erasure. He flipped to the termination notice next. This is already pre-filled. Once it's processed by the management company, the delivery will be made within 48 hours. After that, she'll have 7 days to vacate. I handed the signed document back to him. It'll be handled quietly, he said. No face-to-face unless you request it. I don't, I replied. Smart. 2 hours later, I parked across from the complex Tamsin had called home for nearly a year. Or rather, the place she had occupied while insisting she was just borrowing time, space, and patience. I didn't ring the buzzer. I didn't walk upstairs. That part of me, the one that would have begged for decency or resolution, was gone. I walked into the leasing office instead and handed the packet to the property manager. She gave it a quick skim, arching one brow slightly at the notarized documents, the legal formatting, the prepaid receipt for professional cleaning. Would you like us to schedule a lock change? She asked, clipboard in hand. Not yet, I said. Let's see how she handles it. She nodded, businesslike. No judgment. Just another tenant managing risk. Outside, I passed the communal mailboxes. My name was still on the metal plate for the unit. Etched, clear. Hers never was. She had never added herself. She never planned to. It wasn't an oversight. It was a boundary she refused to acknowledge. This had never been her home. She just nested in a structure I built, one she assumed would always hold her, no matter how carelessly she treated the walls. That evening, the blowback began. Text messages like slow, bitter punches to the ribs. Tamsin, you're heartless. I hope you can sleep at night knowing you're ruining your own family. Verena, how could you evict your sister? You think because you have money, you're allowed to humiliate her like this? Shame on you, Owen. You're burning the whole family down over your pride. That's all this is. Just you needing to be in control. I didn't answer. Not a single word. No justification. No rebuttal. I had tried explaining myself too many times before, and each time, my words had evaporated into silence or been thrown back at me like accusations. Instead, I opened a new folder on my laptop. I named it Freedom, Legally Filed. I uploaded scanned PDFs of the lease agreement, the signed termination form, utility statements, and the cleaning service receipt. I saved screenshots of each text. Not for vengeance, not for leverage, just for documentation. I'd learned that trusting my memory, or anyone else's version of events, was a losing game. By the time I finished organizing everything, the digital file structure was immaculate. So much of my life had been chaotic, reactive, emotional. This was clean, traceable, unarguable. It was almost midnight when I poured myself a mug of chamomile and sat quietly at the kitchen counter, staring at my phone. I scrolled through my contact list until I found Tamsin's name. I hit delete. Then I found Verena. Delete. Owen. Delete. No grand gestures, no ceremony, just a soft, internal click as their access to my life was severed. Later, I logged into my insurance portal. Under the next of kin section, the field blinked, waiting to be filled. I hovered for a while, thinking about what I used to put there. The names I used to think would catch me if I ever fell. Then I typed, none, by choice. Not estranged, not dead, just removed. Deliberately, permanently. Before going to bed, I turned off the overhead light and stood by the window for a long while, looking out over the quiet street. The Arizona night stretched wide and black, the stars sharp and bright in a sky most people never bothered to notice anymore. The same sky that had always been there, even when I felt invisible beneath it. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt done. And that, for the first time in a long time, felt like enough. The wind in Flagstaff cut different than it did in Tucson. It didn't slap your skin dry. It moved slow through pine needles and smelled like something green. Something old. The kind of air that reminded you were still breathing, even after everything. I'd been in the new loft for just under 2 weeks. It was smaller, simpler. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, windows that caught sunrise instead of traffic. I'd swapped chaos for quiet, and for the first time in years, my name was the only one on every form, every lock, every light switch. That morning, I was going through emails when the newsletter from Fullerton State showed up in my inbox. I didn't subscribe. They must have added me after I covered Tamsin's application fees 3 years ago. The subject line read, Parent of the Year, Meet Verena Dorsey. I didn't even blink. I opened the email. There she was, Verena, standing at a podium with Tamsin beside her, both smiling like they had invented hardship. The caption below the photo read, A single mother who never gave up. 4 years of dedication, sacrifice, and unconditional love. I clicked the unsubscribe button. No cursing, no tears, just a quiet exhale. I had been erased again. But this time, it didn't take anything from me. That afternoon, I walked to the community center 5 blocks from my new place. Every Thursday, I volunteered there, mentoring high schoolers in a basic web dev program. Nothing fancy, just an hour of presence, an hour of showing up. I never wore a name tag. I never mentioned my past. I just taught them how to debug errors, how to ask questions, how to not give up on themselves when the screen went blank. One girl, Janelle, lingered behind after class that day. She was quiet, smart, the kind of kid who always made herself smaller when adults spoke. She asked, "Do you have family?" I paused. Then I said gently, "Not anymore." She nodded, didn't push, just tucked her Chromebook under her arm and whispered, "I'm glad you show up anyway." That night, after dinner and dishes, I lit a candle and sat on the floor with an old wooden box I hadn't touched since the move. Inside was the family photo from Tamsin's graduation, the one I wasn't in. I stared at it for a moment, not in anger, but as a kind of inspection, like you'd study something you used to believe in. Then, I placed it face down at the bottom of the drawer and slid it shut. Above my desk was a new frame, a photo of my first group of students, arms raised, half of them laughing, the others frozen in mid-thought. No one polished it, no one cropped me out. I was in the back, smiling like a real part of something. That same night, I got an email from Tamsin. The subject line was short, "You win." I didn't open it right away. I let it sit. I made tea, brushed my teeth, folded laundry. Then I read it. "I guess you got what you wanted. Control, space, a bank account with no strings. I hope it's worth it. You lost something too. You lost your only sister, and you'll never get me back." I didn't reply. I archived the message and dragged it into a folder I renamed History. It was never about winning. She had never been mine to lose. And I had stopped trying to get her back a long time ago. I just hadn't said it out loud until now. I turned off the light in the kitchen, sipped my tea, walked to the window. The stars up here were clearer, less polluted. They didn't blink so much as hold still. I whispered, more to myself than anything. They called me ungrateful, but I just stopped feeding what was never nourishing me. And maybe I didn't get the ending I once hoped for, but I got the one I needed.